Good afternoon, I'm TerryTopCat for clusterview.com and I'm so honoured to have the wonderful Cameron McVey with me here. Good afternoon,
Good
Cameron.
afternoon. Good afternoon.
You know, there's a song called Tempo by Lizzo featuring Missy Elliott, and she sings, I've been waiting for this one, so I've been waiting for this one for a long time, and you're finally here. So welcome to Terry Top Cat's Music Emporium. Thank you, Mark-Anthony, for Clusterview. He's going to be filming and editing. So where do we start? I'm going to start with how we met. So I'm going to talk about this wonderful man called Mako Sakamoto.
God rest his
Bless
soul.
him, God rest him. He was a Buddhist, but I didn't know he was a Buddhist, and I wasn't a Buddhist at that time. So it was 1996. Outside, Neneh just played the Shepherd's Bush Empire, and he was having a sneaky fag outside, and I saw him, and I must have been after the gig, and I was like, great gig, and he said, oh, we're doing something for MTV tomorrow, and I'm like, really? He said, yeah, you should come down. I'm like, how the hell are we going to do that? So I was managing badly with a friend of mine at the time, so we went to John Henry's, and we went there, and we kind of like, so we got a couple of bands we want to know full well we could never afford to put any of the bands there, and we bumped into you, and you said we're doing something for MTV tomorrow. Why don't you guys come? And then we're like, okay. So we left. We were like on cloud nine, thinking, how the hell is he going to remember us? So when we came back the next day, there was all these journalists outside, and we're thinking, oh, we're never going to get in. And you saw us, and you said, yep, those are with us. So then we went and saw the show, and there's a couple of videos actually on YouTube. And Neneh was really lovely to us, and we'd never met Neneh before, and obviously we said thank you, and that was the beginning of when I met you. And then I think maybe a couple of months later, you guys were doing a gig in Bristol, so Joe and I came and saw you, and that's how we got to meet.
Wow.
And obviously I loved Neneh's music when it first came out, but we're going to talk about you, Cameron. So you started off singing in a band called BIM.
Yeah.
So tell me, did your parents have music in the house, and how you got into music?
Well, my mother was blind, so a lot of what we did was via music, and she was really into Sam Cooke, Nat King Cole, Gilles, a really good tenor called Gilles, and which kind of encouraged me to investigate how people could sing like Gilles. So I studied a little bit of Italian opera for a while. But actually how I started making music professionally was I was directing a commercial for a company out of Beirut called Punky Jeans. And I hadn't, in the budget for my commercial, I hadn't catered for the music, and I didn't want to compromise on my visual idea. So I thought, well, I can make music, it can't be that difficult. So I booked into a studio to make the music for the Jeans, with Jenny Innocent singing on it, who's now Paul Cook from the Pistols' wife.
Jenny, yes.
And her lovely daughter, the reggae who's
Holly,
yeah,
yes.
Holly was a beautiful reggae singer. So Jenny came and sang on the tune, and the guy was it was Paul Kaplan's studio, who was behind Hazy Fantasy. And he offered me a record deal. The next thing I know, I was kind of making music. And it was a bit like a heroin addiction. Once you start making music, forget about taking pictures. Because I've been working for Vogue, and I used to direct MTV, and then I just stopped all of that and started making music. And then formed BIM with the help of a now dead record boss owner called Charlie Gillett. And remember Charlie,
yeah.
really famous radio jock, lovely man. And another beautiful man who ended up being our manager, who was the original DJ from the Isle of Wight Festival, the original one, called Jeff Dexter, who used to co-manage Mark Bolan, who used to manage Tom Robinson, who in fact produced I've Been Through the Desert on a Horse with No Name by America. He produced that record. So he was our manager. And then in the group we had Steve Street, who's now a really famous record producer, who produced song number 2 for Blur, did loads of Morrissey stuff.
Said, yeah.
Currently doing Chrissy Hyde, is a friend of ours from the Pretenders. She makes all her records with him, and Steve's lovely. So he was in the band. There was a drummer called, I can't remember his name now, Phil something or other. He was a lovely guy. And then Bobby Henry, who was on Charlie Gillett's label, but he's dead now. And Andy Harley, keyboard player and guitarist. And we were in this band called BIM. And we called it BIM because it was something they shouted out on reggae records at a blues dance. They go BIM in the middle of it. Oh, it's fun.
So what did you release many singles, or?
I think we had. I think we did that tune that you've got, Romance, which is that was our big sort of hit, which was directed by Dave, who's the owner of Stiff Records. Directed because I was working for Madness at the time. Because I did the Madness cover, One Step Beyond. I took that picture.
Oh wow!
That's my photograph. The Nutty Train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's my picture, and I ended up taking loads of pictures of Madness. I ended up going on the road with Madness because their road manager resigned, and everyone was scared of all the fights, and I was the only one who didn't care. So I went on the road with them and ended up doing that picture. And then Dave Robinson, who owns Stiff Records, said as a sort of payback, as a thank you, he directed the romance video.
Wow.
Because he directed all the Madness videos.
I want a big shout out to Chris from
Chrissy Boy
from Madness. He's a lovely guy. He's so nice.
Living in Brighton these days. He's I'm in touch with Chris a lot actually. Me and him are quite political, so we're big Corbynistas.
We'll come on to that because I love that too. So forward from BIM, how did you meet your lovely wife Neneh?
She picked me up at an airport.
I read that, but I didn't think it was true. I thought I'd ask you.
We were basically I was one of the 3 original members of Buffalo, the creative organisation with Ray Petrie, Jamie Morgan, and the 3 of us. And Ray organised a trip to Japan for a load of kind of street kind of model-y kind of interesting looking people to model for loads of fashion shows for Men's Biggie, which was a Japanese designer called Takeo Kikuchi, and Nana was one of the street models. And she came up to me at the check-in counter for the JAL flight and said, "Are you Cameron? Are you Marlon's father?" And I went, "Yeah." She went, "Oh well, I met Marlon. Marlon and my daughter Naima met each other at one of my father's gigs, one of my dad's gigs. It turned out that my ex-wife Bonnie, who's now really good, she's really good friends. We're all good mates. She'd taken Marlon, who was then 3 months, down to the gig, and the 2 kids looked so similar because Naima's only 3 months older." And they look like blood relatives, and still to this day they look absolutely like their blood relatives, but they're not. They're what do you call them? Step brother and sister.
Yeah,
horrible word, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's actually called. I'm not allowed to be called stepfather. I'm called pirate dad.
Oh, I like that. That's cool.
And so then basically I started. I fell in love with her on that trip. I think she fell in love with me. God knows why. And then we had a long trip to Japan, but she was still married in those days, and I don't think it was going that well. But we had to be a bit respectful. So 2 years later, we got together after they, had to kind of respectfully kind of back off, and then we got together. And then I used to have a flat in Frith in the bottom end of, once you go under Paul, past Paul Raymond's Review Bar, and you go to the bottom part of the market. I had one of those 1-bedroom flats in the market there. And I remember Nana coming round, and I said, "What? I've been looking at all your Rip Rig and Panic records and all your Float Up CP records, and there's no writing credits for you. Why is that?" And she said, "Well, no, the boys write all the records." And I'm like, "Come on, you can write." And she goes, "No, I can't write." And I said, "Look, I tell you what." And I bought her one of those little mini cassette dictaphone things. And I said, "Right, I want you to fill this up with the little ideas, and we'll find a song on there, I bet you." So a few sort of days later, she came back with a few songs on there, but no keyboards or anything. I said, "Fine, just leave this with me, and I'll make one of these into a song." So I sat there with my Casio auto chord and worked out the chords. Played her back the song, and she was just absolutely floored. She couldn't believe that it become a song, and she was kind of all amazed. And I'm thinking, secret producer, blah. And as she's going to walk out the door, she went, "What about middle eight?" And I knew she was a songwriter, and since then she's just, you can't stop her. She's so prolific, and that's how we met. That's how we started working, and then we started working on the songs for Like Sushi. I was still in Morgan McVey.
So let's talk about Jamie Morgan. So
Jamie's Jamie Morgan is like my best friend. I'm the godfather to one of his kids, one of my 2 best friends, or 3 if you include Nana. And then we were in Buffalo together. He took my cameras when I stopped taking pictures. Him and Mark LeBon basically shared my cameras. Mark used to be my assistant back in those days, and Jamie took over taking pictures. I ran the kind of back room for Buffalo and did all the deals and everything. And then I went to see him at his photographic studio rehearsing with his band, and they were called Urban Sport. And they were so incredible. I said, "We've got to make a record together, And so I fucked off the other guys from the group and took on Jamie, and we went and did Morgan McVey. And we were the forerunners for Bros. Bros modelled themselves on us, apparently. They came up to thank me at a gig.
So this is what your song Diving, but also
Looking Good Diving.
Looking Good.
Yeah, Looking Good Diving, that's the tune, yeah. It's so naff, it's fantastic.
But
we did it at PWL, Stock Aitken Waterman Studio.
Right, PWL, yeah. And back in those days, they were like the hottest thing, weren't they?
Where I used to work at the studio, I'd be there working away. And so they said they'd produce it, and it was a total flop. But
had the B-side, which was kind of the first embryo stages of Buffalo Stance.
Well, they wanted us to go out and do a sort of PA tour, and I felt that Morgan McVey weren't captivating enough, and I figured I'd do everything I do, I'll always involve Nana. So I think it was me and Nelly Hooper. We just sort of cut it together, edited up a version of it, and put her on it. And then Jamie, Nana, and I wrote it. Jamie wrote on it as well. And then I think he came up with the naff chorus because he's a bit of a bath singer, toilet singer. He's so naff, he's brilliant. Most of those choruses come from naff, stuff like that. And that's how it came about.
So this is the debut album by Neneh Cherry, and 33 years. I think it's maybe like a month ago, or not even a month ago.
Last week, I think.
Last week, yeah. So tell me how the process of writing and producing that record, and also the immediate success that you guys had, and how that impacted on your life.
About immediate. It took about a year to work out how to make someone as wild and left field as Nana, who comes from a free jazz background, to make something that was palatably commercial enough, but still from her free spirit. I mean, we had influences of jazz, hip hop, and we were really good at stealing beats from American hip hop records and then programming them really badly on SP1200 drum machines and stuff. And basically, I learnt to produce by having 4 and 8 track cassette machines that I learnt to work on myself. And that's how Morgan McVey split up, really, because Jamie was more interested in going on holiday, and I would just go back to the studio and just be sitting there for hours trying to make 8 track cassettes work and 4 track cassettes work, and that's how we did it, really. And then the guy who went, Adam Kidron, who was trying to be Nana's manager, bless him, he was doing too many things at once, but he was really helped us, and he got Nana a publishing deal. With the money from the publishing deal, we bought a house in Kensal Green. We had no money left to make the record or anything, so we just moved in the house with a load of friends and just made beats, and for about a year we just farted about. And then Adam tried to get us signed to some big major and blah blah blah, and it just didn't feel right. Nana felt like she was out of place, and I heard that Circa Records had a really good marketing guy, because he'd been working for Ireland and doing the Bob Marley Greatest Hits and done U2 and blah blah blah. A guy called, he's dead now, bless him, called Ray Cooper.
Yes.
And Ashley Newton was the A&R guy there, and they only had Julia Fordham and no success, and I thought to myself, we go there, we could be the biggest thing there. So we went there and they signed us, and they were really helpful and very supportive, and everybody in this little town, in those days they had an office in Wardour Street, and they were just incredible. They were patient, and they ended up signing the Spice Girls in there, and that's how successful they got.
Wow. Oh yes, of course they did.
We did the first record. We found out just as we were going to release Buffalo Stance, because we asked Tim Simonham to come and help us produce it, because we wanted to have, because we had this record that was made, and we had Buffalo Stance, and we thought, yeah, this is great, but we didn't really feel that we could go in and do it again ourselves, so we got Tim to produce it, which I think was a masterstroke. And then, in order to keep the consistency between the first and the second singles, because we knew we'd have to release a bit more of a left field track, so we knew to come with Manchild, but we knew we'd have to keep the consistency, so Tim came in and did some scratching and put his name on Manchild, so it kept the thing flowing. And by that time, we'd moved out of the house. We were living in the house, but we were working a little bit for the first time in East Coast Studios, which was the, where Phil, wow, Philip, what a great studio. He's dead now. I went to his wake recently.
Sorry.
And Nana got pregnant, God knows how, between the first single and the second single. So as Buffalo Stance started to flare up around the world, we were getting, we made a film about it called The Rise of Neneh Cherry. It was, and fundamentally, by the time we came to release the second single, and she was on top of the pops and the baby was in the belly.
Yes.
By the time we did the second video, the baby was in the video, and Nana was a success around the world. And then we needed people to come and mime the decks and various bits for various shows like Top of the Pops. So we asked Nelly to find us people down in Bristol. He'd already introduced us to 3D from the Wild Bunch, who came and wrote the rap on Manchild. We got Mushroom to come up and mime the decks, and he played us some of their kind of DJ tapes, and they didn't really know how to make records. So I said to them, why don't you come up to the house, we'll look after you, can stay in the back bedroom, I'll show you how to make records. And that's how Blue Lines came about, really. And then they were heading towards a manager who I told you about, who was, who we'd ended up in court with by that time. And I said, come on, just come in here and we'll share a PA and I'll manage you as well. And in fact, the reason why I ended up producing the album was I took them to the studio to meet Nelly and Jazzy from Soul to Soul, and because they were going to produce Blue Lines. And Jazzy went out to dinner for 2 hours, and by the end of the 2 hours, the band went, Jack, this guy's rude, let's just get you to produce it, you've done hit records. And we went home and left it, and that's how I ended up doing Blue Lines, because Jazzy went out for dinner. And then when we were making Blue Lines, we did everything in my house, we did it all in the same way, we done Like Sushi, but the band wanted to go and do some more sessions down in Bristol, and that's when we met Jeff Barrow from Portishead, because he was the T-boy on the sessions at the Coach House Studios down there. And then he handed Daddy G a cassette, I heard the cassette, I said, Daddy G said, come on, we can do something with this. And then I said to them, well, okay, come and live in my house. By that time, we bought a bigger house with a bigger studio, and they came to live there, and they made their first record there. And then they were trying to find a name, and I said, where'd you come from? And they said, Portishead. And so I said, that's what you're called. And then Tricky came up to make his solo album in the same studio. He did the demos for Max and K in my studio, in our studio in Milverton Road, NW10.
Well, I mean, this is for British music, this like Neneh's brought.
Fucking nearly killed me making that.
More Like Sushi. This is an absolute classic.
The guy I made it with is dead now, Johnny Dollar, the late great Johnny Dollar. Yeah, he died. They found a lump in his back, and he got work. They worked on it thinking it was a knotted muscle. It turned out to be cancer, and after years of physiotherapy, he died of cancer from the lump.
Oh, I'm sorry. And he did lots of good remixes for Neneh as well, didn't he?
No, they were mostly me with him.
Okay.
It was just me. Yeah. Johnny got a lot of credit. I'll tell you what he did do. He recorded me drunk whistling the chorus for 7 seconds because I was so drunk and I don't remember anything about it, but he put it on a dictaphone and played it to me when I was sobered up. Yeah. Dollar was great.
Big shout out to Grant, Daddy G. I love Daddy G.
Daddy
He's
G,
a great
man.
guy. And also
and to Mushroom, and to 3D,
absolutely,
and to Willy Wee.
And to
Tricky.
Portishead. Tricky. I'll tell
Jeff
you,
Barrow,
one
massive.
of the greatest singers I've ever seen perform live is
She's
Beth
great.
Gibbons.
Yeah, well, you know there were 2 singers originally, and I said they got to get rid of one, so they kept Beth and got rid of those.
And that Rustin Man album she did with him was incredible.
She's great. I mean, I think their Glastonbury BBC films one of the best live. I mean, I think that and Kanye are my favourite 2 live footage from
I have to
Glastonbury.
watch that. I love the Live in New York album. That is.
Yeah, that's the orchestra. Yeah.
Yeah,
In fact, our PA at the time when we left England, she just took Portishead over. That was our bookkeeper. No, yeah, because one got Tricky, the bookkeeper, and our PA got Portishead. They were our passing gifts to them when we left our office in London.
Wow. So after Like Sushi, you moved briefly to America, didn't you? To New York.
We did Blue Lines, and then I didn't want to do the second Massive Attack album because the first one nearly killed me, and I don't like making 2 records with anyone. Obviously, I have to make them for the wife, otherwise she'll divorce me. But the rest of them, I just said no, I'm not doing the next record, and they wouldn't believe me. And they tried doing it with Dollar on their own, and it didn't work out. And I just said, and the only way I could get rid of them was to move some to another country because I knew they weren't going to move out of Bristol. And I said, sorry boys, it's a locational tragedy. And that's when Nelly moved in and did, fantastic job with the second album. And I think the 2 albums together work really well.
They do.
Nelly's really slick and I'm really roughneck, and I think the 2 together. I don't want anyone to think that Nelly isn't a roughneck. He's an old football out from hell, but he makes very smooth sounding records. Yeah. And I'm a massive fan of his production. But I think it's good that I did the rough one first, and then he did the more polished teardroppy type scenario later.
So when you moved to New York, I mean, obviously, is it Neneh?
Neneh.
Neneh.
It's Neneh. It means
Neneh.
Mother in the kind of native tongue of the local
Neneh.
Sierra Leone massive.
Beautiful. So that time it must have been so exciting living in New York. One, I know bad
I'd
things
already
happened
lived
as
there
well.
before. So
Okay.
No, it was a pain in the arse.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, because we had, by the time we moved to New York, we had Tyson was then kind of a bit older. We had Naima, who was, so we had 2 children. We had a nanny, a white Kiwi nanny called Charlene, and I had a black, toothless Jamaican PA called Eric. It was so fucked up when we lived in New York. And one day, actually, I was saying to Nana, this was sum up our trip to New York. We were living in a brownstone in Fort Greene, where Spike Lee comes from. We'd moved out of the family loft, which is in Long Island City. And we were outside our house. We'd forgotten our keys. We drove into town, picked up the keys, came back to the house, and by that time it's, gone midnight. And we're in the car together in our little old Volvo. And I'm going, babe, I don't know about being in New York now. I feel a bit weird having to lock the car door when I'm taking the kids to school. And she's like, I've lived here all my life. I know these streets don't be a worse, blah, blah, blah. Get out the car, 2 kids, one to the head, one to the belly. We get robbed outside our house. And literally, she saved my life, really, because she stopped them killing me. Because basically they were just going to ping me because I was a white, idiot or whatever. And she said, look, don't. She put her wedding ring in one of their faces. But if you do that, I'm going to have to bring them up on my own, like you were brought up. And she saved my life. She thinks on her feet, my wife. But it just felt like wrong at the time because I'm having to pretend. With Eric was having to pretend to be Nana's husband, and Charlene was having to pretend to be my wife when we were walking down the road with the kids. And I understand and respect completely what it's like to be black in America. And if I was black, I would be the same way or worse. But I just couldn't really handle it because I felt scared. I couldn't really properly be a father, without losing my temper all the time and possibly putting us in danger. And so we moved from there to Andalusia. Chalk and cheese, right? How we ended up doing that. But we lived in where we still have our main family home, where Mabel was born. So we moved to a little town called Alarin el Grande, which is in Andalusia, quite near Malaga. And we moved down there just because Nana felt at home there. It was close to Africa. It was close enough to England, and it was so different to wherever else we've been. We felt we needed a rest from the record business for a while, and if people were going to work with us, they would come there. So we went there. But New York was exciting. America was exciting, but a bit cliched. Like, it was the only place where Nana didn't have any album success, because they wouldn't release Man-Child second. They always wanted a Buffalo Stance Part 2. And we did the same thing with Massive Attack. We came with the Daydreaming for the first single. Then we came with Unfinished Sympathy second, which was a bit more challenging. And it was, of course, that's what put them on the map.
Absolutely.
And we did it the same with Sugababes. We did the same with All Saints. We didn't come with Never Ever first. We came with a pop tune, and then we dropped Never Ever, and then it went straight to number one. And it was like.
So let's talk about Homebrew. So that's the second album.
Homebrew was most of Homebrew was made in. A little bit in New York, but mostly was made in Torgap, which is where Nana grew up in the south of Sweden. And Dollar had his eye on some Yamaha digital tape machine. Why, Gus? Why buy a machine that's 25 hours away from the nearest service station and you've never worked before? Anyway, so we moved that to Torgap. It's an old schoolhouse made in 1876. It's kind of like two sides of a cortico. Big schoolroom, small school. Wow. And we eventually bought the librarian's house on the other side of the road as well. And now my friend who lives next door to Mabel has bought the little house on the corner he shares it with a video director friend of ours, a husband and wife. And so we've got like a little village there, and we made Homebrew there, and that was much more Nana exploring stuff that maybe wasn't so commercially orientated. She'd had her fill of being famous. She didn't mind chatting to people, but she really didn't want to go around the world doing kind of Hot 97 radio station promo trips and stuff like that. So she deliberately went for a more introverted record, and to me it's a better record.
I prefer it.
Yeah.
How did it come about with working with Michael Stipe?
I just rang him up.
Okay, because that's a great song. Trout,
yeah. Well, Trout is actually the name of me and Dollar's band. We had a little rock band on the side.
Okay.
So we used to wear hats with trouts coming out the front, like baseball caps with the trout coming out the front, because we were really into the first Nevermind record, and we both had really long. I had crazy long hair, I looked like such a nonce, and I really did look like a child molester. It was a fucking nightmare, and me and Dollar just were really into rock music at the time, which is why we put this really profoundly rock single out to start on the Nana record. And we made Nana's band a bit more rocky as well, just to have a bit more fun.
I remember saw you. I think I probably saw you on a TV show, and I met one of the songwriters, Gripper or something.
Yeah, Gripper, yeah.
Yeah, that was a great. I love that.
Gripper's still around actually. He's a lovely guy. He's a fun guy to work with. I just like going down the studio and writing stupid songs with him. He's a right laugh. He was Dollar's best mate. He moved down to Spain with us just so he could be near Dollar. Dollar lived in the next door house, and Gripper used to cotch on his couch. Like if someone would ask me what I'm going to do for my birthday, Nan would go, "Do you want to go to a restaurant?" No, I want to go down the studio and write a song with Gripper. She'd be like, "Fuck." So she'd go out and party, and I go down to the studio with Gripper and write a stupid pub song.
So you moved to Spain, and
moved
then
to Spain
is that where you recorded Man? Obviously the covers. So
yeah, that's the local. That's our local town. All the girls on the ferry.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that cover.
Yeah, Judy moved down there. He had an apartment in town.
Judy Blaine.
Andrea Oliver and Nikita Oliver moved down there with us. Tricky was there with Martina. They were together still in those days, and they were living down there. Whale were down there a lot, working for us, the Swedish band that we looked after. So we had a whole load of nutters living in a valley in Spain. And there's a local hotel there, which we basically commandeered. It was called Finca, it still is, called Finca La Motta. And there was a lovely couple running it, an Indian man called Arun, God bless, who just died. And his very proper English wife called Jeannie. Jeannie once said to me, because I had a lot of quite dodgy mates down there that were to kind of bring his stuff back from Morocco to England, and Jeannie once said to me, "Cameron, I've had people leave dogs, packets of weird cigarettes, underwear, goggles, but I've never had an oxyacetylene torch left in a room before. And my friends had gone in a boat, they were welding a load of dope on the bottom of a transit van and had it in a gun. But now that hotel's for sale and I want to buy it and make it into an old people's home called Happy Endings. Where you can just go down and all your mates can be there and you can all die around each other and you can get whatever you want and just pop your corks, isn't it?
What a great idea.
And it's at the end of the road where my house is.
Yeah. So coming back to the Man record, no, that's okay. Woman was such a great song, and obviously 7 Seconds.
That's Dolly. You got Woman's basically Dollar pretty much on his own, bless him.
Okay.
Ripping off James Brown. He went down because we had to have a studio. It was called Paco's Shed, and it was this little old boy Paco who had a little sherry shed. And we built a studio in it, and Dolly used to spend hours down there just making. He grafted his arse off over that tune, and I came in and did my bit in about 10 minutes. He was hating on me, but he's really good. And Nana, she's just always great on it. Yeah, that's one of the best songs we do live because he's got that.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's briefly talk about Red Hot and Blues, and Nana did for the 8th Red Hot and Blue album.
We lost a lot of friends in that era before they worked out the Cocktails and AZT and all of that stuff. Lee Blake took over that charity, and so we did. It was all Cole Porter tunes, and so we did Under My Skin. We did it. I did it with Dave. I was still making Blue Lines at the time, so we were in Bristol, and Baby Bam from the Jungle Brothers came down to Bristol, and we did that version of Under My Skin.
And Roy's in the video.
And Roy's in it.
Yeah.
Judy's in it. I mean, there's Tessa Pollitt from the Slits is in it.
Is it? I love Tessa.
She's the best bass player in the world.
I love Tessa. Lovely woman.
I'm trying to get her in Nana's band for the last 30 years. Bitch won't join.
She's a good DJ as well.
She's
Great
fantastic.
DJ. I love.
She's got a fantastic radio collection. She's a lovely human. She's got a lovely daughter, a lovely grandkid.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Big up to Tessa.
Big up Tessa Pollitt.
Yes.
Big up the Slits. Big up Harry.
Yes, absolutely.
The late great Harry.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about quickly before we come on to Virgin Souls, which was one of my favourite albums. I'm not just saying
my only
that.
fan.
There's loads of us, I'm sure. Actually, Steve Aykroyd on Instagram was like, I love Virgin Souls. So that's 2, okay? There's loads more anyway. So you produced, we talk about All Saints, but we talk about this one. This is the Sugababes. There's the original 3 members.
That was because Mabel was a baby and she was really into pop music. And I said, why don't we do a pop record? And Mabel can A&R it. It was almost before she could talk. So we were working in Mayfair Studios.
Oh, wow.
So we did that record. And then, because at the time London Records would have a thing where they'd get a record, they'd be in debt 250 grand, have no singles, and I'd come in like Harvey Keitel in Pulp Fiction and sort it out and make a hit record of it. So yeah, we did 7 million albums of that. It was wicked, and we wrote over. I'm making their new record as well.
Are you the original 3?
Yeah, the original 3.
Oh wow!
They've just done their first show 2 weeks ago.
Oh, well, I didn't know.
No, well, I'll take you to the next one.
Yeah,
they're lovely, and so they're great, and they've got amazing.
And you did Siobhan's solo album as well.
Yeah, that was by default. Marlon, my son, was supposed to make it. I don't know what happened. I've still got to ask him what happened. He won't tell me, and I'm going to get it out of him if it kills me. But they left me to do it, and I'm like, I'm too old to do that. It should be a young person. No, well, I was. I personally think Marlon would have done a better job with Pretesh. They were going to do it together.
Right.
Pretesh Herderji, the great Pretesh Herderji.
In Neneh's band as well.
Well, yeah, but he's been around. He was my tape op on. Like back in the day, he's been with me since he was 17.
And I used to see him at Portishead all the time. We have good chats
because he comes from a strict, proper, Indian family.
Right,
so yeah, we were his first escape into the real world. If you want to call it the real world. Yeah, we died, and then next he's a spliff habit from hell, and he's like, and he's my partner in crime in Mexico. Me and him have got like bad mezcal habits, and he's my man. We go down to mezcalerias and like. We are committed.
So I want to talk about the B-side because this is one of my favourite songs. It is called